What if we could open up the possibilities to shift how we see our legacy as a collective society? Welcome this morning to the Designing Your Legacy podcast. I'd like to welcome our very special guest, Hannah Chapman. She is an entrepreneurial wealth coach, a financial advisor, founder and CEO of X Squared Wealth Planning, as well as a company called Expansive CEO. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi, Angelina. So wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me today.
It is my pleasure. It is a wonderful time to have a conversation this Friday. And so let's start and dig in with kind of a general question that I think is one of the most important places to start. And we don't ask this enough and then wait for the answer. What is it that you would like? What is it that you want? What is it that you desire? And I realize this is a legacy podcast, so it's within the
Mhm.
framework of a legacy.
Yes, I am so glad that we're having this conversation because we do need to talk more about what the future looks like. And for me personally, I would love to see a future where we have changed the definition of what it means to be a billionaire and what it means to have prosperity flowing to and through us. And so what I hope for my legacy to be in the world is not just, teaching and empowering visionary entrepreneurs how to build wealth, but then also fostering and really like embodying this sense of we build wealth to be of service. And so everything that comes to us also passes through us into the things that matter the most. And so, yeah, for me, that really does look like supporting other business owners to really, uplift themselves and uplift all of the people around them.
That's beautiful. So almost it's like I'm hearing that it's almost like we are a vessel and we can use our skills and talents and abilities and access to resources to keep the blessings going and keep
Mhm.
the momentum going. So it's not just we lift ourselves, but we lift up everyone. Is that kind of close?
That's like spot on. Exactly. I really do. I have this vision in my mind. Sometimes I see things in pictures, and it is a vessel, right? It is this beautiful vessel of like everything flows into it. And the more we can expand what we are able to receive, what we are able to be good stewards of in our own lives and our businesses, the more can flow to us because we are allowing it to flow through. And I think the difference here, or one of the nuances that I put on it personally, is that the money and the prosperity pools in places too, and that's okay. For us as the vessel to also have these reserves, that we have for us and for our use, and so that we can have beautiful, expansive lives where we are full of joy, because the more that we are full of joy and the more that we are in our own full expression, again, that just expands what we're able to receive and hold at any given time and then flow through.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Absolutely. So I'm hearing like fulfillment and meaning and connection. And somebody doesn't have to be an island because that's oftentimes what can happen with wealth. It can
Mhm.
be very isolating and lonely, but it doesn't have to be when we're willing to be that vessel, reach out, be proactive and intentional.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful point. And actually, I hadn't put that word with it in that same way yet. The isolation, that wealth can cause isolation. It really can. It really can. And that's not to say, that there, and I think that's the shift that I'm desiring to see in the world, is that wealth does not have to be all about power, influence, control, right? We don't have
Status,
to status, right? Yes, it can
hierarchy.
be hierarchy. Yes, like all of these power infrastructures that we have, used money to, build around us. We can break down that scaffolding. We can break down that structure so that when we do receive prosperity, when we do, have different levers in society, not everyone is doing the same things, and that's fine. It's beautiful, it's needed, it's necessary. And when we allow prosperity to flow freely, it goes where it needs to go.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you so much for sharing. I think it's a beautiful intention, and also just that to remind the listeners and the viewers that money is a tool, and
Mhm.
we still get to be an agency of that. And
Yes.
yeah, and we don't have to copy the other examples that we might see, in the forefront of the news these days. We can find better and new positive role models. So,
Mhm.
is there a backstory to kind of how you got to where you're at as a financial planner, or how you arrived? Because I would call it a very intentional decision to want to be selective about how you choose to allocate your money, how you choose to drive it, how you choose to multiply it.
Mhm.
So, kind of like, is there a story behind like how you got to where you are today to be at this place of what I call choice?
Yes. Yeah, I feel like my whole life led up to do what I'm doing right now. And, there were a lot of um, defining moments along the way that really have catapulted me into being, founding X Squared Wealth Planning, and separating away from, like a larger group setting, that kind of thing, where I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. My parents had their own businesses, aunts, uncles, grandparents on both sides. Like my family is full of small business owners and entrepreneurs. And initially, everything that I experienced as a child really made me fearful of money. I felt like we didn't have enough. I felt like we could barely provide for what we needed. So I certainly couldn't ask for what I wanted as
Sure, like
well. Right.
scarcity.
Like
Yeah,
the scarcity was really strong. And, I was the 10-year-old that, like, when I did get birthday money from family, like I would hold on to it. Like I had hundreds of dollars in savings, probably more than like my parents had at any given point, at times. Right. Cause I was just so like, I have to hang on to this or it's going to be gone. And that led me to not feeling comfortable with entrepreneurship, with big vision, with taking big risk when I was, building in the initial stages of building my career. And at the same time, that pull was always there. That impetus to create something different, that impetus to I didn't ever have any person telling me to do my homework, telling me to get my work done faster, telling me. That was always internally driven for me. And that's not typical, right? It's like that spark of like always seeking for, like that next piece of information, following my inspiration. And so as I was building my knowledge base and, really learning my craft, I started in banking when I was 22, and then in financial services proper in 2007 when I was 23. And so, for like almost 13, 14 years, I was really embedded in a larger culture, learning from people who were good at what they did. And the more I learned and the more I became, uh, a more senior member of the team. Then I became a client facing advisor. Then I started noticing a lot more and having ideas and concerns of my own. And what I found when I got to that level where I was before, that they were not interested in hearing what I had to say. And so when I was seeing issues with how women were not being communicated with, as one example, a couple would come in, the wife would be completely disengaged. And she had learned to be disengaged because no one talked to her. No one looked at her. When she asked a question, they would address the husband, that kind of thing. When I called that out into the room, it was like, oh, we don't do that. Like, okay, well, if
and
you're,
I just want to intrude for a moment that we had a conversation in our preamble about how oftentimes women who are coming up right now who have money, who are earning more income than they have in the past, whether that's within the context of a family business or just as an entrepreneur in this world. Now there's almost like this clash regarding how will they be met, because sometimes money can be power. So I just want to back the train up for a moment. So here you were in a survival mindset growing up, that you weren't even going to test anything because you had to ensure your family's survival.
yeah.
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 Okay,
Yeah.
I'll let you continue on. I
Well,
just wanted to just highlight for a moment that it's also a trend that is happening across, the globe, of women walking into the offices of financial advisors and saying, "Hi, I'd like to invest my money and I've got some ideas and I just don't want to buy product A."
yeah. Yes. And so that was where, when I became an advisor, like with my own clients, they would come to me if they shifted from a different advisor. When I would talk to them, they would literally tell me, no one has ever spoken to me like this before. No one has ever like listened to me like this before. And for me, I was like, that seems just absolutely crazy, first of all. And I see a humongous opportunity here and a need for change, a need for a shift in the industry itself, because we are so focused on, the numbers and the data. And, this is, XYZ gets you to,
These
retire at this
returns.
age. Right. Yeah. These returns, we got to hit these numbers. And all along the way, our clients are saying like they feel anxiety, they feel fear, they feel unsure, they feel confusion. And yet we're saying just do, tick off the list, do the to-dos and you'll be fine. And then when they go to do that, something inside of them makes, resists making those financial changes because we haven't addressed the emotional attachments that they have to whatever's happening. And so that was, that's it. We want to be listened to. We want to be considered. We want to have our questions answered so we can then make financial decisions from a place of empowerment, from education, and from a place of inner safety, really.
Yeah. So here you are, and you've done the inner work to be able to walk them through, to let them know that you can spend on yourself, you can make your own decisions, even if it's countercultural or it might go against the status quo, or you might not have to just choose option A. You could choose option B or C,
Or
right?
X or Y, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's another core difference in how I work. And I choose to work with entrepreneurs because we're just so creative, right? There's just always the next idea coming through, and there's always, like different kinds of ways to invest in yourself, to invest in your business. And being so closed-minded to say that, well, you just make this much money and then put it in this kind of mutual fund. Like that is so not what I desire to do. And that's not what, especially, women and millennials and Gen Xers who are like really coming up and taking over, right? The financial powers, right? Like we are the engines that are moving things through now in this next generation. And we know that the system as is not all that there is available to us. So opening the horizons, being the sounding board of like, I have this idea or I saw this thing, like opening it so that we can have the conversation is half of the battle with entrepreneurs, just so they know that they can have ideas, they can come and I can be a sounding board. And then we can look at how it fits into their bigger, broader vision, their bigger, broader legacy, and make decisions that way too.
Yeah. And weave in those intentions and morals and values and principles and their identity. So it's not just another plan on a piece of paper, but it's got them in it. So what does legacy mean to you? And then we're going to jump to also, like, why do you see it this way? And then what are you seeing in the industry regarding your clients and how they are embracing legacy?
So legacy to me being, if you had asked me this 10 years ago, being a wealth advisor, it's like, what's the money that you have left, right? It's the money and the assets that you leave. And that's like the bulk of your legacy when we talk about legacy planning. And as I've done a lot of work myself, done a lot of inner work, done a lot of work with clients who were also really diving into what matters to them, not just for their own personal lives, but what they want to see changed in the world. The difference that I see now, the shift that I've made is that legacy is the impact that we leave on the world. It's the genetic footprint, that our being here has, spread through, not just if we have children or family, but, when we work with clients, what have you left them? What ideas, what beauty have you brought into this world that is going to continue on after you? And how do we help create more of that in the way that you desire? So yeah, that's my legacy answer.
Thank you very much for sharing. I just wanted to highlight for a moment that I appreciate what you said. It's the impact that we leave on this world. So, what do you think makes it so hard then for people to step forward and to say, I'm going to design a legacy compared to, I'm going to stay apathetic, I'm going to stay silent, I'm going to stay behind someone else, or I'm going to procrastinate this another day? Yeah.
Yeah, this question is just so powerful because it is the shift. There has to be a shifting point, right, for someone in order to be willing to look at it. Because a lot of times when we say legacy, people think of dying. And if you are so terrified of the idea of not being here anymore, a lot of times that puts, you put blinders on and you just won't even look at it. And what I found with, especially with my clients who are doing the, keep calling it inner work, but doing the inner work, right, to really understand who they are and what matters to them. A lot of times the legacy piece is no longer monetary, like a number, like let's get to this number figure. It doesn't tend to be that. And it's not about them. It's about the service that they can, be in the world. And that shift right there tends to be the thing that will launch you forward, right? So that's when they're like, I will do this. I will pour my heart and my energy into what I am doing because it has a bigger purpose. And that's not to say you have to know exactly what your purpose is in order to create a legacy. A lot of times the discovery part starts, right? You can start asking yourself the questions that help you contemplate, right? And help you start like, oh yeah, like I really do want this. I really do want, if I want retirement to look like that. And then I want my children and my grandchildren to be able to experience X, Y, or Z. And I want to, like you get to get the wheels turning so that you can start to guide yourself into what legacy means for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that a lot of times people will do more for others than they'll do for themselves. And I have to wonder if that's when empathy kicks in and they don't want to see that other person hurt, if they can offer them education or resources or something that they know that they can give. And gosh, have you seen lately everything that the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos has done?
Mackenzie Scott is a breath of fresh air. So I think she is amazing, and I'll put it out in the universe. I would love to interview her sometime, and just in case she's listening, because I think she is shifting what it means. And even what I said earlier in the podcast about shifting the measure of a billionaire, like she is doing that right now. She's like, all right, I've got the reins on billions and billions of dollars that just keeps making more. And I am going to get it out of my hands and into people's hands who can use it. Right. And in a way that we really haven't seen, at the magnitude, the speed, the amounts that she's giving, some like historically Black colleges and universities are getting the biggest grants they've ever gotten in their entire history. And that pushes progress forward faster.
Yeah, I was just wondering how Jeff Bezos feels about it. But anyways.
Right. I'm sure she's like, done. Doesn't matter. Here's what I'm doing now.
Well, it'll be interesting. I think they'll both have different legacies that are unique to their footprints. So
Mhm.
So one of the things you've brought up before is that about 18 to 20% of women are often the minority in leadership positions, whether it's the boardroom. And I almost wondered, like in your personal story, and I'm not going to dig too deep in the public, but I almost wondered, it's like if somebody has a breakdown and then they can have a breakthrough. Because I wondered if you embraced your legacy almost from the point of like, well, if I don't embrace it, I could be, hating my life.
Yes. And I mean, to your point, I think we all do it, right? If we're all really, truly honest, when we get to that point of like, I have to make a change, that breakdown is the thing that allows you to break through. And for me, it was the realization that my values did not align with the space that I was in before. And I also had to come to the realization that like I am so appreciative. It's taken me a couple of years to get there, but I am so appreciative of everything that I learned, the positive, the negative, everything. It's all information to, incorporate and to understand that it's informed how I work now. And when I was going through it, it was incredibly painful. And I mean, like professional PTSD, like having to take anxiety medication to get myself out of the house and into meetings, and I know so many of us have experienced that
Those are the growing
because
pains.
they were the growing pains. And you don't know it when you're going through it. You're just like, okay, I just got to get through. I know this is what I'm meant to be doing in the world. I know I'm meant to help people through financial transformation, and all of the pieces that are like feel like my dream is crashing down around me, like just crumbling, are really just it was almost like a wrecking ball coming through and getting rid of all of the old structures that I had built in my head about what my career would look like, what all of my dreams were professionally, just taking a wrecking ball to all of that, letting it all fall so that I could see that, up ahead, ooh, that is way better. I need to go there. And it has to be, I have to create the business that I know is, needed in the world. It has to come from inside of me, not from doing it the way that other people are doing it.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of that scene in Game of Thrones where it's like the phoenix rising from the ashes. But it's
Yes.
but it's painful that moment. And then afterwards the rebirth is amazing and I'm so glad I went through that and the transformation was worth it. But in that moment, it's like it's like the dark hour of the dawn. It's yeah.
Yeah. Dark Night of the Soul. Yes.
Yeah.
Like for me, like I literally it felt like just fire burning through my chest, right? Going through those painful realizations and then taking the steps. Like it was literally like walking through fire is what it felt like internally, and physiologically. And once you move through it and you see that, oh, I'm okay, I'm still here, right? You're like, all right, we can do this.
Yeah, and
Let's
I
keep
and
going.
I think this conversation is really important because I think a lot of times, especially people who are very bright like yourself, they'll say to themselves, "But I did everything right. How could it go wrong?" Without realizing that that tunnel could be the best gift ever.
Yes.
And especially when it comes to money, there's so many different ways to be creative, but I think sometimes it's almost um maybe some people can feel, I don't want to use the word threatened, but perhaps like, well, if you do things differently, then that shines a light that maybe I sold out a little bit or I didn't have the courage to think differently.
No, you're completely right. 100%. I agree so wholeheartedly with that when we allow ourselves our own light, when we, unmask our brightness, we, do the thing that, lights us up the most. So for me, it is, doing financial planning in a different way than what's currently out there. And when people, see that, when people feel like, oh, wow, Hannah is like building relationships with her clients that they don't want anyone else, right? Like that's like her clients love her. That shines a light that automatically shows like, turns the light on in the room where they are putting themselves over their clients, right? Like the relationship aspect that's broken suddenly illumined because I am just being me. I'm not doing anything to, like to harm or to be threatening to someone else. It's that they are seeing just who I'm being with my clients and they feel threatened.
Yeah.
Right. So it is that paradigm.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the final scene in that movie Jerry Maguire with Bob Sugar. Why
No,
can't
that
we have that type of relationship?
and it's okay, right? And it's like the problem that we have as women, I think being in, those leaders, the minority in leadership positions and in, male dominated fields, is that we then take that personally and we shrink, right?
Well,
Like
the attacks hurt,
right.
or the
Yeah.
attacks can hurt.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
And so that's the taking it personally rather than and seeing it as, because I did this for a long time. So this is me reflecting on me. I took it as I was doing something wrong, right? I made myself wrong for, being different and seeing things differently rather than where I'm at now, which is understanding that I am like special. I am different. I embrace everything about how I do things in the world differently. And if someone else doesn't like it, that's their work to do, right? Everyone else can do what they want, and their opinion of me has no bearing on me, right? That's something that they are working through, and it's shining a light for them that, hey, you know what, maybe you could be doing something differently, but that's
yeah,
not my job to deal with.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good for boundaries. I just want to highlight for a moment that I think the freedom that you give yourself then is the freedom that you give your clients.
Yes.
Yeah. And I just, before we go into structure and flow, I just wanted to highlight for a moment that I think that one of your former bosses, I might call him mentors, I had an opinion and I just wanted to run it by you that maybe he had some regrets in his 70s of, well, I clung to the system to be a part of the club. And now, Hannah, you're so, bright and young, in some ways young, you're not like in your 20s,
Or
but
to
I mean,
70s.
right, you're not in your 70s, but I almost wondered if it was a little bit of maybe resentment for the regrets he had in his heart and soul, but he was mad at himself even if he took it out on you.
you know I have come to a place of forgiveness, and it's taken many spirals to come, like, okay, I can forgive this part, and I can forgive this part, and I can forgive this part. It's taken a long time to get there, to feel compassion for that, because yes, there was the impetus for literally everything changing and me leaving and starting my own firm was that he felt that I wasn't listening to him how to build my business exactly the way that he was trying to tell me to. And I disagreed. And the other partners disagreed as well. But at the same time, his opinion of you're not doing it right, you're not going to be successful, won out in the end. And won out. It didn't really, because now I am doing exactly what I want to do, right? And the forgiveness that I had to give to both him and to myself was that I would not have left if he had continued to support me. I would, even though there were several other orange and red flags like waving around in that practice, if he had not, um, like been just exactly who he was and been, challenging in a lot of different ways and not been like, you're not doing things exactly how I want, you're not going to be successful. If he hadn't gone there with me, I would have never pushed through. It wouldn't have been painful enough for me to make what felt like a very scary leap at that time. And so regardless of where he landed, it was, oh, well, actually, I do want to share a little story. One of the things that I felt when I was going through this was, I was angry. I felt anger. and I'm not like a quick to anger person at all. And so when that was like flaring up in me, when he was saying, you are not going to be successful, I felt that hot anger flowing through me. And I did want to get even, or, say, like, he needs to retire. Like, you've been talking about this forever. Like, it needs to happen. And the thought that I had, and then I read something that, like, if you act in revenge, like, that will come back to you. And my thought when I heard that was, bring it on. So I was in that place, right? I think most of us have been there at some point, like, oh, okay, you know what? If he has to go and I have to go, then whatever. I don't care. Like, we're done here. And a year and a half later, it took a while for it to like fully come to fruition, but that is what ended up happening, is that it was not a good fit. And it took that level of
Intensity.
professional trauma, intensity, yeah, for it to happen that way. So yeah, there's a level of understanding when you're trying to change others. And that's what I was doing, is I was trying to change the way the practice was running, when I was not a partner. It was not my business.
Yeah, it's interesting because also a lot of times with I don't want to say masculinity, because not all masculinity is toxic or that hardcore. Because masculinity can also be providing and protecting, but sometimes in masculinity it's a very much like a win-lose dynamic. Whereas I think with femininity, if the femininity is healthy, it's like, well, everyone gets to win, everyone gets to have a slice of bread, we all get cupcakes. Like, it's just, yeah. So it's a very different energy, and it's not necessarily female or male. It's the feminine and masculine energies, but again, knowing to have them, kept in balance. And I know you're going to speak into structure and flow in a moment. So what are you thinking right now? I know you want to say something.
Yes, yes. And that is the balance that we are, like, as a society, we are trying to like find our footing with again. So yeah, all of the talk of toxic masculinity, and being, all of the pieces that we ascribe to what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. I feel like we all have those pieces inside of us. It is, we have a balance of structure and flow. You can call it masculine and feminine. You can call it the warrior and the lover. However you want to, even yin and yang, or yang would be the masculine, yin would be the feminine. Those are all this part of the same conversation, that we have a balance in each of us. And I know for me personally, I tend to, I have a strong, structural balance in me, right? And so being in the data, understanding numbers, and how to structure things, and how to be logical, and how to be organized, like that comes very naturally to me. But so does the relationship building, so does the collaborative work, and so does this, the nurturing aspect. And what we've done in certain industries, financial planning, estate planning, legal work, all of that, like, these are both very heavily male dominated fields. But besides just being male dominated, they're the masculine structure dominated. And that has led to overly competitive structures, even within firms, right?
Diversity mindsets.
Yeah. It makes it really difficult for anyone who is not, just a cis straight white male, to be successful
And rise.
and rise, by
Mhm.
nature of how these institutions are structured. And so when I was coming up through those ranks and realizing that my relationship building skills, like, I was really good. I am really good at the data and the structure, and helping people understand logically, take these big financial concepts and bring them down into, language that we can understand and have a conversation about. And that wasn't what was special about me. Like, anyone who is good at data and numbers and organizational skills can do that part. It's the relational piece, the relationship building, um,
Trust.
the trust, yes, building trust quickly, and earning and keeping that trust, right? So it's not just the, building it, but like being mindful of it and um, again, I'm going to say it again, being a good steward of the trust that people place in you. That is all flow. That is all yin. That is all the feminine, right? And so it's not just that, that I can do that and men can't, because we all have both of these sides within us. And so teaching and expressing and allowing that side of me to come out and be fully present also gives permission to every other financial advisor that I meet, every other, professional who is in a service-based relational field, to tap into their own, flow side, their own relational side, their own like
Authenticity.
building, right? Authenticity
Yeah.
side. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of times that can get pushed down because of that scarcity again of, well, I've risen to the top. I'm really successful. I'm a top earner in, the numbers across the country. And I'm number 3 or 13. And I can't lose that if I dare bringing out my authentic side. I just wanted to highlight two things before I ask you the next question, which is I really admire the fact that you learned your strengths during this. And then second is, I think a lot of times women don't always have a rite of passage. Like men will join the military. And so I think sometimes when women, like you talked about going through the ranks, I think a lot of times, like when women start to get hazed professionally, they didn't play like G.I. Joe and whatever growing up. So it's like, what are they doing?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Even, yeah, like take it back to Greek, in college, like sororities. I mean, I wasn't in like a normal sorority, but the hazing and all of that. Yeah, like that's not how we treat each other as women. And so for the most part, right. And especially in healthy feminine relationships. And so, yeah, it is very foreign. It feels, again, you feel like an alien almost in your space when you're like, what, I don't want to be,
Hazed.
yeah, I don't want to be hazed. I don't want to be, I don't want to like go through the fire of like, well, you just have to go through this in order to be
You got to
successful.
go through the gauntlet to prove yourself.
Right. You're like, oh, no, 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 I don't. I've been, I mean, that was one of my experiences, was that, I'd been in the industry for 9 or 10 years already before becoming a client facing advisor. And it's like, no, 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 I don't need, I don't need hazing. I don't need to like go through like all the trials and tribulations of a brand new person to the industry. Like I come here with a decade of experience, and I would like for that to be honored. And a lot of women go through that route because we feel like we have to know everything. We have to have all the answers before we can speak. So we tend to be really, really, really good at it, like way better at our specific job roles than men are at the same level, because they don't have to, right? They can go on, what is that? Men get promoted more on
Confidence
their
and being the loudest
potential.
voice.
Yeah, on
Yep.
potential, versus women get promoted based on results.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting because yeah, the gauntlet happens. But I think a lot of times in that rite of passage, women are like, yeah, what are you doing to me? Whereas guys kind of expect like that. And I'm not saying that I approve of it at all, okay? I'm just saying
Right.
that sometimes guys have already dealt with that, like growing up with like the sports teams and if you like, yeah, they yeah, and they accept it. Whereas I think a lot of times it's very hurtful for women because they haven't built up that thick skin.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So if
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, actually, I wanted to talk. I'll just for a second. I'll expand on that, because um, that's our treasure. That's our gift, is that we don't have that thick skin, right? And it
Oh, to
allows us,
feel.
right? It allows us to feel, it allows us to connect more easily with people. That when we build up this thick, thick skin, this armor, little like plates of armor, it deadens your ability to connect with people.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why they say sometimes it's like some successful women, it's like they have to remember how to become women again because they turned to be men. But even in politics, we don't see enough feminine women yet in politics, but politics is also, like you had said, kind of like law or financial planning. It's still like
Mhm.
if like maybe women are 20% ballpark, in the leadership in the
Yeah.
boardrooms. Same thing with politics. There might be a sprinkling, but then how do those women have to play in order to survive? So share your thought, and then I'm going to go to the next question.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's just, it's so true. And um, again, it's a balance. I think it's, a balance of men being able to let their guard down a little bit. The thing that came through was like, for me, like I literally, like my skin is thin and delicate, and my husband has like, his skin is like hard, right? Like it's literally like thicker than mine, and that's a genetic difference between, male and female and in humans. And I think it speaks to, that level of, yes, we are different in that way, but if we can all like come back down to our baseline, like slough off again the extra layers and just be who we are, both, men and women, we can all be more heart-centered, we can all be more connective, um just in general.
And less afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you were to have a hardcover coffee table book, what would you write by the end of this year, December 2022? What would its chapter say about Hannah Chapman?
Mm.
In your office or living room coffee table, we got this hardcover legacy book about Hannah.
You open up the pages and there's like a picture, and then what does it say? What does it say about me? Mm, that Hannah Chapman is here to help visionary entrepreneurs through true financial transformation, and to really connect, how we feel about our money with how we invest, how we utilize, how we share our money, and that the two go hand in hand. And that if you can't find her, in her house, then she's probably out in the mountains, hiking and taking pictures and picking flowers.
That's a wonderful way to remember you. That's great. That's lovely. Yeah, because one of the things you said in the very beginning is when legacy is no longer monetary, and I think you just spoken to your identity and your passions and what makes you happy. And
Hmm. Yes, yeah. Being intrigued. Sometimes I don't know if, like what your special nature is, but it's like my eyes just need to see mountains, like with like in front of me, and then be next to like really, really big trees. Like those are the two things that feel so good in my body. I'm like, I want to be in the mountains and I want big trees.
wonderful. Love it. So, what would you say are a couple of your core values or guiding principles as we round out this legacy conversation?
Yes. So I just went through this exercise the other day, so it's perfect timing. For me, my professional and personal values are pretty aligned. First one is connection. Like, how are we connecting with ourselves and then with others? And the second one is kindness. And how are we showing, again, ourselves kindness so that we can then extend that to others? And then transparency, being, how can we be open and present and transparent, and, just have everything out in the open so that we can all stay more connected and stay more kind.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm so glad that you spoke into your values as well as how you define your legacy, because also if there's any young adults, and there's a lot of viewers and listeners that are under age 40, hopefully it will inspire them to reflect and say, what are my core values and how can I speak into them in conversations with other people and so forth. Yeah.
I love that.
Are there any thoughts you would like to share or a website?
Oh, yes, I'd love to connect, with, especially with this population, right, of people who are thinking about their legacy, and just the people that you speak with, Angelina, that, that this idea of like, I can design this, right? that's the core. And it doesn't just apply to like, how are we doing this, in 60 or 70 years, right? By the time, when we're young and we're going to live longer, because science is getting us there, right? But, it's not just about what happens after you die, but how do we then apply those principles and utilize them now in life? And so one of my newest program, through Expansive CEO, and so that's super easy. Go to expansiveceo.com, and that takes you through, what my heart is here to do. So I take on just a very few financial planning clients each year, because I hold those clients in such, such white glove service, that I'm very selective about how many clients I take. And Expansive CEO is really the side where I'm pouring this out into the world of how do we create more? How do we discover what we truly want? How do we align to it? And then how do we really watch it expand in the world?
Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much, Hannah, for being a guest speaker this week and speaking into your legacy. Thank you for your courage also to speak into your story, because there's more women out there than you probably realize. I realize, and other women realize, that have been through that gauntlet and have
Mhm.
either just shoved it down in shame and silence, or they are just beginning to speak into it. So I think one of the benefits today is to kind of let them know that they're not alone and there's choice for them. And the choice is living and breathing and walking, and has been through it and has come out the other side, risen from the ashes like that phoenix. And yeah, and is happier and glowing and just blessing this world with, an intentional legacy. So, okay, well, I'm just going to read out my closing paragraph.
Thank you.
All right. So, okay, so in closing, I'm Angelina Carlton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I coach. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources for every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. So if you're listening on YouTube, please remember to subscribe and like. Or if you're checking us out on Apple Podcasts, please remember to rate and review. So thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you, Hannah, for speaking into the possibilities of seeing our legacy in more open doors when it comes to us as a collective society.